All right, Dan.
All right, mate.
Dan Anderson-Jones, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
It's good to have you in here. We've been chatting about this for a little
We
bit.
have got it done eventually.
You are the man behind, MTB Giveaways
MTB Giveaways Australia, yeah.
Australia.
Yeah.
So we've been chatting about that because I've got a little bit involved with kind of promoting some stuff and getting it out there. But I'm interested to know, like, what was the mindset behind starting up this company? You said it was a bit of a side hustle, and now it's kind of becoming the main hustle. Like, what was the reason behind it? Like, what made you want to do it?
I think it was like, like I said to you, we've got another company which has kind of been our baby for a few years now. But for many years, obviously massive mountain biker, motocross rider growing up. That's like my passion, my hobby, And I always thought, how cool would it be if I was to be able to like forge a career out of that, So I always thought, how can I do it? Because I wasn't good enough as you are to be like World Cup level or anything like that. So I thought, I still want to do it. I want to build a race team or something. I want to create something within the industry where I can be part of it and I can have a say, So it kind of just naturally went into the giveaway side of things, mainly because I did one giveaway and it felt amazing. I remember the first giveaway I did, it was a pretty basic trek at the time, and I thought that's all I can afford to get my hands on, but I'm just going to sell some tickets, hopefully somebody will want to buy a ticket to it and we'll just see how it goes, and a few people didn't make any money on that one, lost a bit, but hey-ho. And some guy won in Brisbane, and it was actually his mum that won, and she won it for her son. So we met them in Brisbane, myself and Jen, and we gave this bike to this young lad, and it was just like the feeling I got doing that was just like nothing could top that, just you say giving back is a really good feeling, and it really is, so I was kind of like addicted from that point. I think I gave the bike away, watched him ride around the car park on it, and it was just, I think if somebody would have given me that opportunity when I was like 10, 11 to ride a $5,000 plus bike, I didn't always have the most expensive bikes growing up, so, I would have jumped at the chance. So I think that feeling was very much an addictive feeling from the start. And that just grew and grew to the point now where we're 25 giveaways in, I think it is. And it only gets better, giving people, turning up at their house, giving them the bike. And it's funny because and tell me if I'm talking too much, by the way, if you want to come in, it's funny because when I first started the company, in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have called it MTB Giveaways now, because I feel like it's developed so much more as a company in terms of what I'm doing. So it's been a bit of a hard run in that sense. We've been doing it for about 12 months now. Well, in the making for about 2 years, but actually doing it for 12 months. But yeah, where was I going with that? But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have probably called it MTB Giveaways for the fact of where it's grown to now. And what I'm doing now is I'm actually, every penny I make, I put it back into sponsoring riders. I'm putting up prize money. I'm doing all these things for the mountain bike community, which don't necessarily come under the giveaway bracket, if that makes sense. So that's kind of been a hard one for me, I think, in terms of trying to break away from the giveaway side of things. It's a pretty big industry, as you know, and it's a fruitful industry for a lot of people. But it's been tough for that reason, it's a giveaway company. So in hindsight, if I would have gone back now, I probably would have called it something else to get to the point where I am now and actually trying to, realistically improve the MTB community, So, but yeah, I think that's where it came from. Started off as a side hustle, giving away a few bikes here and there, making some content. And now it's got to the point where it's like every weekend, I feel at the moment we're driving to somebody's house, we're jumping on a plane, we're putting it in the bike bag and dropping it off to somebody, So, yeah.
Does that feeling, you said it gets better?
It does, yeah.
Explain that.
For sure. I mean, the bikes that I'm doing now are so much better than the bikes I started off with, because like I said, that first giveaway is, it was a good bike, don't get me wrong, but compared to the bikes that I'm doing now, I worked with Jared Graves a few weeks ago, and I managed to get a Yeti from him, which was, the Fox Team Yeti those guys race on, and that's like a $15,000 bike, A guy called Noah in, funny enough, Queensland again, won the bike, and I'm going to drop it off to him this weekend, and he's a keen rider. He's on the verge of, you might have heard of him, Noah White, his name is. He's on the verge of becoming pro. He was actually at the race this weekend in where was it, in Tasmania, but he actually broke his collarbone. He fell. Anyway, that's another story. But But yeah, I mean, it only does get better. It's the bikes are getting better, and the feeling that it gives me when I rock up at somebody's house and they're like, "Oh, what you're doing for the community," and we've been following you for a while now, and we think what your mission is amazing, and that itself is separate to the giveaway. We got the giveaway, and then we've got people saying what you're doing is amazing, and we're happily support you, which is great, considering 12 months ago the main question I was getting asked, "Hey, is this a scam?" And that was like a frequent thing. Now to the point where it's like, oh, like we really like what you're doing within the community. So it gets better in that sense. I think people condoning what I'm doing, if that makes sense.
How do you think you pull people away from the idea of, because I guess there is a lot of giveaways and stuff that are scammy. How do you find the best way to, I guess, reassure people that what you're doing is legit and you're actually helping people and doing it for a good cause?
I think it's just credibility all the time, and just trying to build that trust in I need to always film content. I need to take photos. I need to do all those things to make sure people are aware that there's real people out there all across the country that are winning bikes, and in the early days when I only had 2 pictures up there, it was pretty hard to do that, because people are like, oh, they could easily be friends of his. You know what I mean? That could be what he's doing in the early days to build the company up. But where I'm at now, we're like I said, we're 25 people in. We got winners in WA, SA, Queensland, everywhere, and I used to actually jump on a plane with a bike bag and take it there myself, but I'm kind of like, don't do that anymore because I feel like it's so stressful. I'd be flying like every weekend. But yeah, it's just constantly building the trust, getting people like yourself involved as well is a massive, massive help for the company, because obviously you're a big name in the mountain bike community in Australia. So getting as many people involved as I can to really back it and really, explain, what this guy's doing is a good thing. He's giving away bikes on a weekly basis. He's actually putting his money where his mouth is and actually giving back, whether I'm giving out prizes to local races. I'm going to be doing a little bit for the downhill series in 2025, give us some cash prizes. Might have annoyed a few people me doing that, but
why do you think you've annoyed people doing that?
Do you know what I've learned? I've learned everything is a business, right? Everything, no matter how we look at stuff, and no matter how me and you love mountain biking, yourself because you've been in the pro world, everything's a business, isn't it? So, and I felt like when I've worked with the smaller brands, they're like super keen to get involved in doing what I do, when we really want to jump on board because they are smaller, independently run brands, but I feel like when you're like myself, who's really only been on the scene for about 12 months now, we kind of burst onto the scene pretty hard and pretty heavy, and that was a good thing. But at the same time, we're dealing with companies that have been doing this for years and years and years, and they've got their own way set in concrete. So if you think about it, downhill series next year, it's got, I think to win, don't quote me on this, but to win the whole downhill series, I think you get, as a male, well, I think it's the same for females as well, I think you get $1,500 to win the series.
I don't even know if it would be that. I think I won the overall for the Nationals like back in, I don't know, I'm going to say like 2019 or maybe 2021.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it was really a national series. They piggyback off the Vic series, so it wasn't even a proper... I didn't even know I was competing in the Nationals at some of the rounds, and then they're like, oh, you won the overall. I think they gave me either it was free entry to all the races the year after. So to me, like my sponsors pay for it anyway. So to me, you're giving me something that I'm not even paying for anyway. Yeah. So literally you're giving me nothing. Yeah. And I'm like, how... Like imagine winning something and they go, okay, you can come back again for free.
And this is the thing. It's like, I think they might have bumped it up. Yeah, I read it might be. Yeah, but so even that's a result now, right? Compared to when you raced and just got free entries, which were paid for already, right? But so I read that and I thought, well, I want to do something, but I knew there might be complications for me saying that I'm associated with the Australian Cycling Association because I'm not. So I didn't want to kind of like piggyback off the back of them because I know what complications could come with doing something like that. So I created an individual promotion that we're doing as a company where I said, hey, fastest time of a day, I'll give it $1,000. And we'll give it to them right there on the day. You can come over to the tent afterwards, and whether we present like a big check or whatever it is, that's what we'll do, And I was very, very I suppose, careful and making sure that was an individual promotion we were running. To come back onto my point, because I feel like because we have burst onto the scene pretty quickly, you know, there's probably a few heads turned in the right and the wrong way at the same time, if that makes sense. You know, people are very skeptical about sort of backing anything when it's against the norm. You know what I mean? So the $1,000 prize money, it went down to Toowoomba Mountain Bike Club. Leanne and her son Oliver, who were messaging me, they're all over it. And I think Oliver's going to race now. He wasn't going to race, but I think he is, because he sees the prize money, right? So, and that's great. Like, the feedback's been amazing. But then you get the other side of it as well, in terms of, you know, we're not sure if that goes with the guidelines of the Australian Cycling Association, you know. And I'm thinking, well,
what are the guidelines?
Sure, I know,
what are
right?
the guidelines?
I
It's
know,
like,
right?
It just makes them look bad, man.
Yeah.
It's like you're putting up more money than they are.
Yeah.
And it makes them look bad. So they, it's like, you can give out money to whoever you want.
Yeah.
Like, why is it like you're not sponsoring the event. You're just saying, if you can go the fastest down the hill, I will go give you $1,000.
That's right.
It has nothing to do
exactly.
Just because I can look at the timesheet doesn't like, oh man. But
oh mate, it's politics, honestly. And I've noticed that more than anything recently. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, 80% of the people are super keen for it, obviously, you know. People are going to go and race, and if you get $1,000, like I said it on one of the lives I did a few weeks ago, in terms of you know yourself, if you're a racer and you're going to throw yourself down a track, whether it be a World Cup or a national round, and you're going to take a lot of risks, right, to win the race, then if you're going to win that race, then surely you should be able to take your missus or whatever out for a meal that evening and say, hey, I've won a race, you know, and have that excitement of getting that cash pot for putting your neck on the line, essentially, and, you know, and racing and putting the risk out there, you know. So that's what I'm trying to do. But yeah, I mean, some of the bigger brands as well, and some of the bigger bike brands have, you know, not being negative about it, but it's just, I think, you know, like I said, it's a business, you know, for a lot of people. And when people have been selling bikes for so many years as a business, and then somebody comes in as essentially the Robin Hood and says, hey, you can win a bike, all you need to do is pay minimal, kind of thing, you know. I think there's different opinions, you know, and opinions are good. Opinions are, you know, there's always going to be different ones, but yeah, it's been a crazy one, 12 months. But like I said, it's got a lot easier, you know. First few months, it was just an uphill battle, you know. It was like, another one of these giveaway companies, this looks sus as, kind of thing, you know. But but yeah, it's funny, over the last 3 months there's been such a huge shift, and it's just come out of nowhere. It's like almost like one morning I woke up and there were so many brands and people wanting to get involved, and going back to the feeling that it gives me, that feeling to, you know, I'm dealing, but I don't know if I should he's told me not to mention it because we're in the final stages, but there's a downhill company in Australia, a downhill team in Australia that approached me a few weeks ago, and they said, would you like to be the main sponsor of the team? And I thought, geez, that's like, to be in that position after 12 months of them approaching me to, you know, obviously it would be a cost to me because I'm a sponsor, right? But even to have my name in the mix of potential sponsors of big downhill teams is massive for me.
Yeah, it's a massive win, isn't it?
Yeah.
But like you said, there's always going to be people that kind of push back at the start because
100%.
People have been burned, people have been ripped off. Like, there is that kind of timidness that comes with something like this.
Yeah.
But then I guess the more you do it, the more people actually see it. And like when you associate with these brands and these people and you go, oh, okay, this is actually a real thing.
Yeah.
But like it takes someone like this, or like I always talk about the ADC, what is it, AC? I actually can't think of it. It's a jiu-jitsu competition.
Yeah.
ACDD or something, or people listening is going to be hating it. But anyway, I talked to a friend about it the other day, and they had a guy called Gordon Ryan, and he set up a competition on the same weekend as pretty much their world championships, and pulled all these people across, and then paid them, I think the winning prize was $1 million.
Okay.
And I think in the actual world champ competition, whatever, for the jiu-jitsu was like 10 grand. So you can imagine the difference in what
the stir it would have caused.
Yeah, the stir.
Well,
And it's almost like, I've always thought this with the downhill, is someone needs to come in and put on events where it's like, we're going to pay this amount of money, we're going to have this amount of content. Like, even it blows me away, man. It blows me away how hard it is for athletes and media to produce content at races. Like, they're like, do you have a media pass? Do you have this? And I'm like, man, if you've got a camera, get them on the hill. Like, get them filming, get them producing it. They limit us with everything. Yeah. and they think it's better for them because then they have like the media rights where they can produce stuff. I'm like, if you gave every single rider a GoPro and said, if you vlog your weekend, we will give you $100 or $200, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be anything. But if UCI, Red Bull, whoever's running the event, Discovery, gave me a GoPro and said, if you vlog this and put on YouTube or your socials, we will give you $500.
Yeah.
And now you've just got this army of content creators that have already got a following who watch your series, that are producing content, advertising your series for nothing, well, for $500 or whatever it may be. And then like the viewership, like you look at someone like Jack or Bernard or Loic or all these people that have created big following on social media, like that's the reason people watch your event.
Yeah.
But they have this like disconnect from, it's like athlete, organizer and sponsor of the, like they're all like these three separate, and even media, like it's like each person's in their own like little group of whatever the fuck it is, and they don't come together and work together. That was like my last year on the World Cup circuit. I could just feel this disconnect of like riders aren't getting along with other riders because everyone's got these separate opinions, and then they're not getting along with the organizers, and it's like this Chinese whispers of trying to get shit done. And I remember it being at Ludon Vial, and they'd cancelled the junior race in the morning. It was like the first time they'd cancelled a race due to like bad weather, even though people were riding. Anyway, I walked around with a cross and a microphone saying that downhill was dead just to stir shit. Anyway, I ended up walking into they were trying to make a riders union, and it was the biggest fucking flop I've ever seen, because it was like, if it came down to it, and like a riders union's got to be like, all right, we're not racing because of safety reasons, whatever it may be. Safety was the biggest one. And for example, not long before that, I don't know if you saw the big contraption at Andorra, how they crossed the road. And it was like scaffolding into like
I
remember that?
Yeah, I do,
So we all saw that, and we were like, we can't do this. Like this isn't safe. And we talked about like, we should just say we're not going to ride unless you change that. And then half the riders like, well, I'm going to ride. Another one's like, well, I'm going to ride. So then it just falls apart instantly. So I was watching this go down, and I was like, there's no unity in this riders union, so it's never going to work. And then going to Ludon Vial, they were having this like meeting in a tent, and it was like all these riders, and everyone, it's just like, I can say it's just a bunch of bitching about what's happening, but there's no actual action that got taken. And then that just completely fell apart. And then you look at what's happening with increased team fees, and just what is your opinion on like the vibe around not only mountain biking in Australia but and the World Cup circuit? Do you feel like there's a bit of a disconnect now?
Massive, 100%. If you look at it, you know, let's start from like 15, 20 years ago. You know, how downhill was then when I first fell in love with downhill. You know, obviously we've lived out here for 9 years now, so I did all the childhood racing all in the UK. So I was, you know, even like in the UK it's different to Australia, because it's kind of like you don't have state by state races, everyone just rocks up at the same race. So, you know, I was racing against Brendan, Josh Bryson and all those guys, you know, because there was nowhere else to race. There's only one national race and everyone just turns up at it, you know. But yeah, I mean, it's changed massively since then. You know, you had characters like Steve Peat back then, and it was like he was a bit of a rock star of the whole downhill world back then, and it's just changed from very much, and it's not a bad thing, but it's changed in this way. But it's changed from very much let's go out with your mates, have a few beers on the evening, and then let's just go and ride down the hill as fast as we can and have a laugh whilst we're doing it. It's changed, to where we are now is it's a lot more clean cut, and it's a lot more professional. But sometimes I think that's a good thing in some senses, but I feel like in a lot of other senses that's a bad thing, because if you're going to try and make a sport a Formula One sport, which everyone's saying they're trying to make it a little bit more that kind of vibe, you know, with the big race teams, and, you know, a lot of race teams not really being able to get in these days. I think you've got to pay like that as well. Not Formula One pay for sure, because it's not as big as that, but I think, like you said, you know, 44 grand, I think it is, to enter the race now. I think they bumped the prices up. UCI, again, don't quote me, but it's they turn over about 26 mil a year, I think it is. I read on their financial report. And then if you're, like, to put it into perspective, if you go to a MotoGP rider, you get paid a hell of a lot more than downhill riders, and you said, right, you're going to try this sport for a day, you're going to race down a track for 3 or 4 minutes. There's going to be 10 occasions where if you muck up at the pace you're racing to try and win a race, it's gonna pay. It's gonna hit you really bad. You're gonna crash or whatever. You know what I'm trying to say. And you've got to risk it all. And then if you become the top in the world and you're like you literally win a World Cup, right? You'll get paid €4,000, €3,750 or whatever it is for that. So, I mean, I think that's crazy in this day and age for so much money to be floating around. And I think for the top rider in the world, the number one rider, to be getting paid that is just. But like you said, I feel like if the riders are not together and they're not joined, then it's very hard. You could take the top 10 riders right now who won last year, for example, and say, right, if you guys really make a stand and put your foot down a little bit for change, well, they've just, and if they potentially lose you, then they've just lost 10 of the best riders in the world who got top 10 last year, right? So I think if there was a little bit more stubbornness coming from the riders and the riders joined together and said, these are the changes we need to make and we need more support or whatever it may be, I think that would help massively. But I do understand what you mean in terms of it being split. You see that just on YouTube videos, you know what I mean? You don't even need to be there. You see it, you see riders having different opinions about the track, which I suppose you're always going to get. But it's, I don't feel like there's much community these days. There's people wanting to do different things and which creates an environment where the race organisers are kind of like, well, we're in a strong position because nobody's really getting together and telling us how it is and how we want it. I personally think riders should turn up to races based on the value of what they can bring to that organisation. That's what I think. I could be wrong. I'm way off the mark when I say it, but rather than just saying, okay, a prize money of €3,000 or whatever is for the top rider, what value can each rider bring to the race? So if you look at someone like Aaron Gwynn, for example, he's got like 500,000 followers on Instagram. And it goes back to what you were saying a minute ago. If they just allowed Aaron to post throughout the whole weekend and film content, well, the amount of marketing that he can give the organisation just from having that name in there is massive, So, and there's others as well, like with big followings, even yourself, like with big followings who have a say and people will listen to what you've got to say, So I feel like it should be more of a case of, we want you to come and race for season. What's the figure you're putting on it?
Well, I saw that at the end of that year that I raced when I started to kind of push back against it and ask these questions. And it was funny because every time I do a video, it'd be the top page of Pink Bike. And then the comments, you'd get 60, 70 comments of everyone like either agreeing or putting in something. And I was like, no one is providing a space to talk about what's happening. And I felt like I was just trying to like wave the flag for like, let's just make it fair. Yeah. Or let's just have a discussion about it. Like it seemed like the UCI just said, this is what's happening. We're not going to take anyone's opinion or advice. Yeah. And if you don't like it, get out of here.
You don't need to be racing.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I was just like, I wanted to just have a discussion. Yeah. Like no one would talk to me. I reached out to Chris Ball and said, would you go on my podcast, and just never got a reply. Like, really? I'm open to talk to these people that are running the events and get some feedback, but they didn't want to listen. They didn't want to talk. They wanted to go, okay, this is what we're doing. Like I would always talk about how you see something, perfect example is the UFC. Yeah. They have an event, Dana White, whoever else has done well, like have a press conference and get all the organizers, either the track builders, the Chris Ball, whoever, Warner Brothers CEO, whoever it is, the guys that won, put them on stage, get the media there, get riders there, answer questions. Yep. Why did this happen? Why did you cancel this race? Yeah. Because it all goes through this back end, and they go under the umbrella of, oh, the UCI did it. Like, okay, who is the UCI that is making that decision to cancel the race, to do this with rider pay, to do whatever it is? Like, be accountable, stand in front of people. And I guess that was my big push. And I got a lot of hate back from that, from actually like kind of standing up for it. And I kind of, by the end of it, I was like, well, I'm leaving anyway because I think this is going down the shit. And a lot of people, like a lot of other people, have slowly fallen off the bandwagon as well because they don't see it as being what it was. And I also understand, like, there's always going to be change. And I'm not the one to say, oh, I wish it was how it used to be. Change sucks. Like, I'm open to change, and I think it's good, and it can change the sport in a positive way. But also get feedback and go, okay, maybe that wasn't right. Maybe let's do something else and kind of grow that way, not just go, nah, this is it, you're wrong. and then realize it doesn't work and then go back on what you've done anyway, but then don't even address the fact that you made a mistake. It's like people are so desperate to not be wrong that they just don't actually
just brush it under the carpet and it'll go away. And I
saw, like, there's so many things that, like, people are like, okay, we want it to be more professional. And yes, I agree. Like, if you're going to make it more professional, add more money.
Yeah.
But then also at these races, if you cut the field down to 30 people, like, unless you're at a World Cup race and you realize the atmosphere around the difference between 30 and 80 riders, and that just comes down to riders on the track, fans. Like, if there's 30 riders, fans aren't going to want to go watch the race because you're just going to be standing on a hill for half an hour between riders that go past and go, well, I can just watch this at home.
Exactly.
So then you take the atmosphere out of a World Cup event. That doesn't look good on TV. So now people don't want to watch it on TV because there's no atmosphere. Like, imagine watching, like, you look at when COVID was on and there was events on, there's no crowd.
Yeah.
It changes it.
Same thing.
It changes the feeling around the riders, the viewers, everything. So now you're trying to make something more professional by cutting down the numbers, and then by making it what you say is more professional, you've actually done the polar opposite.
Yeah.
Have no fan base, have no atmosphere, and have a product that isn't as good that people don't want to buy. So there's less money. So you completely
the hardcore fans almost, like the real downhill fans. Like, I get what they're doing. They're trying to put it on multiple broadcasts, trying to make it this 30 riders down a hill. Where I kind of understand, but at the same time, for a hardcore fan like myself, like, I completely agree. It's kind of, I used to go, when we lived in the UK, we would go to Fort William, which was travel 5 hours up the road, and we always used to go and watch the World Cup. A lot of friends of mine were racing, so it was good. And it's always, you'll know yourself, good vibes at Fort William World Cup rounds, always like really good laugh. And back then, some really good friends of mine were racing World Cups, but they weren't, if they got in the top 50, they were happy, that was a really good result for them. So they weren't any of the top guys, but they still, regardless, were racing World Cups. And that's what I went there for, to cheer on a mate who was coming down, who had managed to get himself into a World Cup, and most of them were privateers as well. And that's what I like to watch. I like watching some of the up-and-coming riders coming down, and have the whole day watching, for hours on end, walking up and down the track, watching different lines and stuff like that, not just like, here we go, big gaps between each riders, we're going to have 30 of them down and then that's it. It's changed massively. I mean, I think Rob Warner, leave it, like, not commentating on him anymore, makes me, I don't get excited to watch it as I used to anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I watch it now, I'm kind of like, I like watching it still, and I suppose the drone footage they get now is pretty cool, but, like, compared to how it used to be. But, like, Warner, when he used to do it, and even like that viral video when Danny Hart did that World Champs run, and him and Nigel Page were doing it, that made it so much more interesting to watch, because those guys were like real big fans of the sport. They were making it exciting to listen to and watch. So yeah, I think that was a bad move. Like, I don't know why that happened. I think Rob went through a little bit of a bad time with that as well. I think he like slipped off the radar as soon as he got cancelled off that, because that was his thing. That's what everyone knew him for. But
well, it comes back to creating an emotion, and creating feeling. And when you see someone that is that passionate because they have not only competed and done it, but then live and breathe it, that comes across. So then when you get rid of that and I'm not saying like the guys that came on, like, I don't think it was the right move putting someone that doesn't have English as their first language
100%.
as someone to commentate.
Who was it?
Cedric.
Yeah.
And I don't want to shit on it because I know it's a hard job, and it would be hard to create that emotion. And obviously you're filling shoes that are quite big, but it's just like like watching it, and like you said, what World Cups used to be like, and it was just a shift. Even when I watched them, man, I was like, I didn't even care for it.
Yeah.
It's like something that I've done and competed in for half my life is suddenly just like,
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, because we got to wait till like 11 p.m. here if you want to watch the guys racing down. It's normally quite late, and
even later we probably start watching around then.
So before, when Red Bull were doing it and when Rob was doing it, and a lot before the changes came in, it was, I'd stay up and watch the whole thing, and I'd be really excited to watch it all and watch it to the very end, But like you say, now it's kind of like, I don't know, I love watching riders so much, but I get what you mean. It's kind of a bit like, I don't know, something's changed, and it's like maybe they're trying to bring in more of a crowd who aren't originally into the sport to watch it. I'm not sure.
I think that's the thing. I think obviously putting on Eurosports and stuff like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
trying to broaden the viewership.
Yeah.
But the thing I don't understand, because obviously when Red Bull were running it, they would do 60 riders or 80 riders,
Yeah.
but they'd televise the last 30.
Yeah.
But you've obviously had those other riders come down. And so really what they're trying to do is just that 30 riders and without the extra 30 or 40 behind them.
Yeah.
But all those riders were like not getting televised anyway. So why does it kind of matter in that that point? Like the TV is still going to see the same amount of riders, but all of those guys that have come down earlier, like a guy that qualified 60th, 70th, who knows, could have an absolute blinder and possibly get in the top 10.
Yeah.
So it's like that gives that person that opportunity to actually have his work come through and then go, okay, I got 10th now I can build. And I can speak on that because that was me a lot of the time. Like I wouldn't qualify that well, get to finals day, I'd have a good run, build confidence and build from there. And you hear about so many people like Benoit Coulange, Andy Cobe, like they didn't start off as these top 10 riders. They built over years.
Yeah.
And it's like you're taking away the opportunity for those riders to build slowly from a 70th place to a 50th to a 30 to a 10 to a podium guy.
Yeah,
like that takes years of progression.
100%.
And as soon as you wipe out that top 60, you go, you're just top 30. Like how many riders that would one day be a top 5 rider get taken out of that equation because you didn't give them the time to actually progress into it?
100%.
And it's like we're never going to know the answer to that. And I think there's going to be a real, like it's going to fall off a cliff. Like you're going to get all these riders like your Danny Harts, your Aaron Gwynns, all these guys that have been at the top that are going to all somewhat retire around the same time. And then like, who is this next generation of up and comers that you've kind of cut out because it's just been this top 30 guys to break into or top 20. And now suddenly, okay, a heap of guys are retiring that have been the OGs of the sport. And you haven't really got this like feeder series or like progression of riders coming in. So now I'm like, okay, who are your superstars?
Yeah.
Who are your athletes that kids are going to put posters on their wall? Who are people going to idolize? Because that's kind of fallen off a cliff. And you're always going to have your stands out like your Jackson Goldstones and all that. But I just think that generational like growth is going to kind of go out of the way because
100%.
It's funny. Like even when I was coming up, like I had like Lucas Shaw, Phil Outwell, Taylor Vernon, like all these guys were in kind of Luca, Loris Vergier. Like we were on that same age group and we all progressed together. And like pretty much 6 or 7 of the guys I race against are all like the best in the world, world champion and stuff. But like we had that growth together. But now it's like trying to break in from going from juniors straight to that top 20 to top 30. Like that's a big jump, man.
Yeah. And you've got to be, there's no room for growth because not everybody's going to be like that Jackson kind of figure where it's like you burst onto the scene and then all of a sudden here I am in the top 5, top 10, you know. Like you said, some people need that growth over time. Like Bernard Kerr in a way has been like that as well. Like
it's a slow burn.
Like only recently is he like maybe like 2 years ago, something like that. All of a sudden he was up there, you know, and it's it was a slow burner for him. He dropped down quite a bit, I think, and his results, he was like, you know, lucky if he got in the top 20, top 30, and then all of a sudden he just picked it back up. And, you know, so people go like that as well. There's multiple factors, isn't there? You know, like bike brands you ride for at that particular time, who's your mentor as well. Do you know what I mean? Multiple things, which I'm always interested in the mentality of racing. Something I'm so interested in because it's, for me, for example, when I used to race, I would go to a practice track and people would be saying, "Oh, you're looking fast. You know, you're looking really good on a pressure track." I'd go for a race and everything would fall apart, and it would be like, you know, the arm pump would kick in and all that. It was almost like I had lost the race in the gate before I'd even left the gate. You know what I mean? And I've always been super intrigued by people like yourself who is, you know, what's the difference there? You know what I mean? Like is it from childhood? Is it from early childhood? Is it a confidence thing? You know what I mean? Because the moment you know yourself, the moment you have self-doubt in a sport like downhill, motocross, whatever it may be, you can lose the race before you've even gone out of the gate if there's that element of self-doubt. You know, so I've always been super interested in that as well. And, you know, what makes the difference between somebody who can go really quick on a practice track and somebody who actually is able to perform on that day, you know?
It's all mindset, man.
Yeah.
It's this mindset. I would always tell people I'm like a B grade rider and an A grade racer.
Yeah.
And a perfect example of this, one time I was in Adelaide and I was riding with Connor Fearon.
Mm.
To be fair, it was one of his local tracks, so I knew it pretty well, but I was filming with my brother and him, and we started filming and riding. I told my brother to stop filming me because of how much faster Connor was than me. Like, it was just like a joke. Like, I'm not even going to bother.
Yeah.
Anyway, a week later, we had national champs at Eagle, and we started practice and we got into the race. I ended up qualifying faster than him by like half a second, and then I think he ended up beating me by less than a second.
Yeah.
And I thought back to that practice track, and I was like, it made me really think about it, because I was like, how can I literally tell my brother to stop filming me because it's that night and day, but between how much quicker you are than me.
Yeah.
And then you get put in that race environment, and I go, I would always find an extra gear. It would always be something, and like you say, you would go the opposite way, where you'd either get in your head or worry about arm pump. And that's the thing I always try and like instill in athletes when I coach them or train them, is like, you need to believe that you are the man, and you need to believe that everything you have done leading up to this is right.
Yeah.
And now you get to enjoy that and actually put that out there. Like, it's not, you should be excited to be at a race. Like the race is the fun part.
Yeah.
Everything leading up to it kind of can suck, whether it be like hill sprints or training in the gym or pushing yourself. Like, that's hard.
Yeah.
And some people might enjoy it. I enjoy parts of it, but you get to that race and you're like, I've done everything I need to do. I can just go out with such confidence and have so much fun, and then that builds on itself.
Yeah.
And I used to think when I would go to a race, and I literally couldn't wait until it was either time training, qualifying, or racing, because I knew. I was like, I know what I can do.
Yeah.
I just want to do it. Like time couldn't go quicker.
Yeah.
Where on the flip, when I'd go to a race and you start stressing about your bike setup, the track, you like, it's getting away from you.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to like that preparation you
That's
do
right.
leading in. But it's just that mindset around, I've done everything I need to do, and now I can enjoy that in a race environment and not get so caught up on what someone else is doing or what the track's doing or what the conditions are, because it's a good kind of way to look at it, like life in general, but racing as well. It's like, the track's going to change, the lines are going to change, the bike setup's going to change, and there's only so much that you can control, and then the rest of the time you just have to go, all right, it is what it is. I'm going to go out there and do my best, and not get so caught up if it rains before qualifying, if a berm blows out that I was hitting, if an inside line gets chopped out. It's like, it is what it is. I'm going to ride it the best I possibly can, and not get so caught up on what other people are doing or what the track's doing or what the weather's doing, and just go enjoy it. But it's actively convincing yourself of that and getting to a point where you don't even have to convince yourself, you just live it. But that's what I've seen with like great races. They see something happen, and you see there's not even a moment of doubt. It's like, it starts raining before quali, put the mud tires on, start thinking about your lines, get your roll off. Like, it's just, it has to be that. You don't even get that time to stress or worry about something. It just has to be, okay, this is what's happening now. I can't control or change that. Like, it's so cliche and so many people talk about it, but it's like, can I control this situation? No. So why would I put any energy into worrying about it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What can I control? Okay. What I put on my bike, what I put on my body, what lines I do. Okay. Well, that's where you put your energy and go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, like the things, you don't even want to waste time kind of thinking about those things, do you? You make the changes that you need to make, and then you go, and you can't let that doubt creep in, especially racing at that kind of level, because if you do let that doubt creep in, then it's
it'll consume you.
It will. Have you ever been in that position before of being in a race and you've let something get to you and it's kind of like affects your whole race run, just kind of something small, or were you able to kind of get over that quite easily?
In a race?
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd smell weed on the sidelines.
Smell weed.
And that would actually be super distracting. Enduro was really bad for it.
Really?
Because you'd be in like in the zone and you'd
yeah.
ride past and you just get a big hit of it.
Really?
And you'd just be like, fuck, someone's smoking weed. And then you're like, okay, focus in.
Yeah.
Dude, it's actually super funny. My first podium I ever got in Lenzerheide in 2015, so weird, man. I don't know why it happened, but I was seeing a girl back in Australia.
Yeah.
And I can remember so clearly, I did like the road gap about halfway down. There was these S-bend turns you went around. Mm-hmm. And I just started thinking about her. And I was like, I wonder what she's up to right now. And I just had this thought. And I just started thinking about as I'm hitting these turns.
Yeah.
And I'd hit about 5 turns. And I was like,
on a race run at the time?
On the race run. First podium I ever got in my career. And that's the only thing I remember from that run. Because I was thinking about this girl back home. And did like 6 corners and then shook my head out of it and then finished the run, and it was a podium run. But I just that was the one bit I remember.
That's weird. Maybe that's because you were in the zone so much. Maybe your mind was that kind of like, I don't know, relaxed in a way. You know what I mean? When you're kind of like, yeah. When your mind just goes, it's like when you're meditating, right? Similar thing. It's like, because you could, when you were having that run, you know, I suppose no matter what race what level you race at, everyone gets that run or that lap sometimes where they're like, I was on another planet right then. It's like I didn't even need to think. It was just so smooth. Everything was easy, you know. And like when you meditate, things just pop in and out of your head, and that's the point of it, right? People say you're just meant to let those things pop in and off it goes. And maybe it was something. Maybe it was like that.
Well, it's like the ultimate form of mastery, really, is being to do something unconsciously.
Yeah.
So I guess somewhat I was doing that. Like it's funny. Like when I surf now, I'm so conscious of what I'm doing. My hands have got to be here, my body weight's got to be here, and I still mess it up.
Yeah.
But on a bike, like I can ride down World Cup track and kind of daydream about a girl back home and still do like that's the.
Well, you've been doing it for so many years as well, right?
Exactly.
So you do it pretty naturally. How did your ride go? You went out riding recently as well, didn't you? How did it?
Yeah, I actually went for a ride with Jack Moyer. He came up and we went for a burn on the e-bike.
Yeah.
I've actually got a brand new downhill bike sitting outside there ready to. I think I will race Toowoomba.
Nice.
And I'm going to go down to Victoria and race that as well.
Nice.
So,
awesome. Okay.
I need to get back out on the bike.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's funny. A lot of people kept asking me like, when are you going to get in the bike again? When are you going to get in the bike? And honestly, I just had no want or appeal to ride a downhill bike for a while. And it's I think people find it kind of interesting when you can do something for so long and then suddenly change completely and pivot to a completely different life.
Yeah.
And to me, I never understood why people found that strange, because I really honestly believe that you should try as many things in this life as you can, because you never know how much enjoyment you'll get out of one thing compared to something else.
Yeah.
And it's not until you do something that then you go, well, that is or isn't for me.
Yeah.
But if you don't open that door, you're never going
to know, right?
You won't know. So I think you should open as many doors as possible
100%.
while you can and enjoy what's inside. And like I could have opened this studio and go, actually, I hate this. This isn't for me. But I know then.
Yeah.
I know. I stopped once.
You've tried it and you're giving it a go, see what it's like. And then, I think it's great that you've naturally kind of come to the, you know, you haven't forced it or anything, you know, and you're at the stage now where, you know, after all the shit you went through with your crash, etc., you know, a lot of people, you know, I don't know how you were feeling before that, but a lot of people that would scare them off for good. Do you know what I mean? And that would put them in a place where they're like, no, and I know a lot of riders that have been in that position, either in motocross or whatever, and they're just like, no, that for me, that's it now, you know. Even if I want to, I had that big off, and that's so it's really cool that like you've allowed that time to pass, and you know, and remember, kind of like, you know, I hear a lot of racers say like, you know, Josh Bryson is a really good example of this as well. He was on a run. Remember that run he was on? I think he had won the overall.
2014.
It was world champs when he broke his ankle, right? Was it
2014?
Yeah, 2014. And he was on one hell of a run, I remember. And after that, it was kind of like maybe the injury. It kind of went away for him a little bit, although he was still getting pretty good results. And then it went. And then he was like, I'm done with racing. I don't want to do it anymore, you know. And you listen to interviews with him now, and the way he talks about it is, I've always loved riding my bike. I've always loved hitting turns, riding my bike and having fun. And that's what drew me to the sport originally, you know. Not funny enough, I think he's actually going to be doing some racing soon. So I've heard anyway. I think
he's doing
getting
hardline.
Yeah. That's a crazy event, isn't it? Hardline, jeez.
But I think it's like the whole, you know who James Hunt is?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah,
it's like he did it.
Yeah.
It's like the dog that's chasing the car and he caught it. He was like like he should have been world champion that day and like should have gets thrown around very loosely. Like obviously he made a mistake and didn't get it.
Yeah.
But like I find winning an overall is more impressive than world champs anyway. And it's like he like you have a goal, and this is what, unless you've set a goal and achieved it and become the best in the world at that thing, I don't think you can throw an opinion at what someone else wants to do. Because it's like how many more races do you have to win until you're kind of happy? Yeah. It's like if you enjoy riding your bike, you can get sponsors and go ride your bike and have fun, and you don't have to race. Like
That's right. A whole new world of that these days, isn't it?
Yeah, like social media's come out. Like the thing that turned me off downhill World Cup racing, and what appealed to me at the start was I love traveling and I love riding my bike. Yeah. These this provided both of those things.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point though when, like, how many times will I go to Fort William? How many times will I go to Mont Saint Anne? How many times will I go to Leo Gang? Stay in the same hotel, ride basically the same track around the same kind of people. And it gets to a point where I'm like, yes, I'm in a cool place. Yes, I'm around good people.
Yeah.
But I've done this before.
Yeah.
And each year kind of blends together to the same thing. And I hate saying that as it's like in a complaining way, because I'm so grateful that I got to do that for so long. But you get to a point where you go, I kind of want to do something else. I want to experience life in a different way.
Yeah.
And when you've also got that amount of risk attached to it, it's not like you're just rocking up there and hanging out with your buddies. It's like, no, I have to actually risk my life competing in something that's very dangerous and, like, for example, obviously can go very wrong.
Yeah.
And it just got to the point where I was like, I think I just want to do something else. And I do, like, I miss the excitement. I miss the crowds. I miss pushing myself to that. Like, there's a point you push yourself in a downhill race, and this probably comes across in most other action sports, where you kind of step outside of what you actually know you're capable of. And this, like, little gray area of, like, this could go really wrong, but let's just flirt with that. Yeah. Like, let's flirt with this little thing that could go amazing or terrible. Yeah. And that little bracket of, I don't know what you would call it, excitement, adrenaline, all of these emotions is a pretty cool place to put yourself into on a regular basis. Yeah. And that's what I think we get addicted to. It's that unknown of, how good am I and how far can I push this? Yeah. And when it pays off, man, it's like pure, like, ecstasy of like excitement. And then you do it in front of thousands of people as well. It's like it's hard to try and create that. And it takes time and effort and just repetitions of getting so good at a craft that you can do that on a world stage. So I definitely miss parts of that. And I guess going back to race, like the local races, I'll probably get a little hit of it. It's obviously not going to be the same of world champs in Europe with chainsaws and 80,000 French people. But I think you need to, I don't think you need to, but I think if you want to get the most out of this experience, which is life, is like, if you can find something that you're generally passionate about and brings you great joy, like, put more effort into that until you get to a point when you might be able to do it in front of a crowd of people, or even if it's not a crowd of people, but just your friends and family, and you can create that feeling of like performing something or playing an instrument or whatever it may be at this level where you're like, I'm stepping out of who I am and creating this, like, I don't want to say aura, because it kind of sounds a bit like hippie-ish, but you go to this like new state. It's like a new state of being, and it creates these feelings that you wouldn't normally be able to create unless you're in that. And I don't want to say flow state either, because it's almost different to that, but it's like you kind of alter who you are, and it's through like putting that energy into a passion. So I always tell people, like, you know, when you felt something and you're like, go touch that. Like that's really cool.
That's the happy place right there.
That's it's happy place. It's like, there's so much joy in that moment. Yeah. And like, I always ask people, I'm like, where do you get your happiness from? Where do you get your excitement from? And it's just like, people think about it. It's like, I know, friends, family and all that, which I think is great. But I'm like, what do you actually do where you feel like your best self? Yeah. And I guess for a long time, for me, mountain biking, it created a version of myself where I felt my best. It gave me confidence. It gave me purpose. It gave me all these things. So I think when anyone retires from anything, it's like a part of that, like, how do I get that person back in something else? Yeah. How do I get the best version of myself back doing something else? And I think you can see a lot of athletes, when they retire from something, they get lost in drugs and alcohol. Yeah. Because they are trying to find that person, but they don't know how. That's right. They didn't get that high. They're trying to struggle. Well, they're trying to find that high. It's why you see so many boxers and UFC athletes, right? They're trying to get that high that they had when they were in the octagon or whatever, and they just want to fight, and they're trying to source it elsewhere. You know, there's big sports for it. You know, they go and get retired, and then they can't really find it. You know, so yeah, I think it's amazing that you've been able to sort of find something else and run your own company and all of that kind of stuff. You know, and just find that passion in that, because it's not always easy to find. You know, sometimes you go searching for, what am I doing? What am I doing? And what am I doing it for? You know what I mean? Like, because money always comes into things, right? People always think about money because that gives you a comfortable life, but money's not always what you feel passionate about, which is a hard thing to come to terms with sometimes. So, but that's what I'm so really happy about with the MTB thing. I've always said with the giveaway company, I've always said,
if it can give me money in the long term, great, because nobody's going to shy away from money, right? But at the same time right now, if it can give me that sense of well-being where I'm like, oh, for ages, I've just been in a position where I've sat watching a TV at home saying they should bloody make those changes, they should do this, do that. Now I'm creating a platform where I'm getting these big riders saying to me, wow, what you're doing, man, is amazing, and that right there is the passion, and like I said earlier, you take that passion, what was a side hustle, and you only do side hustles, right, because it's like, it's probably not going to make me a living, but it's something I want to do, which sounds pretty cool, right? So when that changes into something else, it's even better.
I think, like you said, that money should never be the start of a driving factor towards going into something. It's like, what do I enjoy and how can I be useful?
Yeah.
And if you can kind of figure those out, you're like, well, if I do that, eventually someone's probably going to pay me.
Yeah. Well, of course, eventually, yeah. But I mean, if you start something for just money, it's like, it might make you money for sure, but eventually it's not going to make your heart sing, right? It's just, I would never do anything. I'm 35 now and I'm not that old, but I'm at the stage where I'm like, I would never just do anything for that gap in the market, that money thing, because, you might work hard at it for 12 months, 24 months, really plugging away because you can see the dollar signs, but there will come a point where it's kind of like, I'm not happy doing this anymore. You talk to like millionaires all the time, people super wealthy who are like, I'm not happy. Like, I've got all this money in the bank, but I'm not actually happy. I'm not content within myself, But yeah, that's why it's so cool, because I've been able to, and we love what we do anyway, but it's been able to change that side hustle into something that I'm super passionate about. And when you yourself, when you get up in the morning and you're like, oh, this is cool, like this is what I'm here to do. This is what I'm happy about,
You get excited.
100%, yeah. Because there's nothing worse than when you don't, right? It's like when you're not excited for doing what you do and making a change or whatever it may be that's making you passionate. It's it's difficult because you're getting up and there's that lack of purpose, isn't there? And
you wanna know when I kind of knew that the downhill was kind of done. I was at Val de Sol, and I didn't qualify, and I was happy.
Yeah,
I was happy that it was meant to rain that night, and it did. And like Val de Sol is obviously one of the hardest tracks to ride in the dry, let alone in the wet.
Yeah,
and I didn't qualify, and I just didn't really care. And I went back to the apartment and it started raining, and I just started smiling. Because I was like, I don't have to ride tomorrow.
I don't even want to do it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, man, I remember like when I first started in 2012, and it was my first World Cup at Val de Sol, and I crashed and I actually broke my scaphoid in my wrist. I didn't know at the time, but I was trying to like strap it up, and I was like, I might be able to ride. And I think about how much I wanted to ride with a broken wrist and how upset I was and broken I was. And then to think fast forward to last year when I just didn't care.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's when you kind of know, when you're like, I'm actually happy to not be competing and doing this.
And when you're racing at that level as well, like we said earlier, if you're not in that mindset and you're not up for it, it's dangerous, right?
Super dangerous.
You're racing against all the other top riders in the world. It's so you gotta kind of be up for it. I want to do a lot more around that space, like the mental health coaching of riders, because I feel like a lot of riders, and I saw it back in the day as well in the UK, like I said, because it was such a small place, you knew what contracts people were getting left, right and centre, and then you'd openly speak about them. And even back then it was kind of like, okay, we'll give you your first deal, we'll pay you X amount, we'll pay for your race entries, whatever it may be, but there was no one there like giving these guys mentoring or giving them advice on, okay, how do I get that right so I can perform properly, at such a high paced sport. So that interests me a lot as well. I'd love to do a lot more of that moving forward. I sponsor a few riders at the moment, 4 of them altogether, and they're all young apart from one who's not old, but he's in his early 30s, and they're all at that stage where it's kind of like, if someone gives him the right mentoring, then they could be really, really good riders, you know what I mean? But it's just like, and they're nice and young, so it's kind of like just getting them to have that advice, So I'm trying to organise something within the team where it's kind of like, is there like a sports psychologist, for example? Do you know what I mean? Just give them a Zoom call and pay for that as part of a team kind of thing, and give them a Zoom call once a month and say, hey, how do you feel about it? Do you know what I mean? And have a chat with them and give them that support in terms of mental health side of things as well, because that's super important, isn't it, with racing, which a lot of people don't talk. Mental health is one of those things anyway. A lot of people don't talk about, right? But especially in athletes, you know, like. Well, like we said, what does it take to be like a, you know, you said you were able to put yourself in that position, in that state of mind. A lot of people aren't. Like a strong majority of the population aren't able to say, all right, it's go time now. You know, this is it. This is what I'm here for. You know, and it's yeah. So I'm trying to do that for them as well, because I feel like that's a massive part in putting a youngster who's maybe 15, 16 in a position where they're like, I can actually do this. And manifestation as well is a massive thing, you know. Like, I remember when I used to race both for downhill and the motocross, it was my dad always used to say to me, when he was like, when you're on the gate and you got like 30 other riders around you or whatever, it was like the best thing to do is just remember your last race. What did you smell at the time? What music was playing? Who were you surrounded by? Literally put yourself within that moment so much to the T, where you can actually smell what, do you know what I mean? So like in depth to what that situation was. And you'll know yourself, because I'm sure you've done it many a times. You're sitting on the starting line or the starting gate or whatever it may be, actually already thinking you've won in your head, because you're able to manifest that so well, you know? So yeah, there's a lot to be said about that, I think.
Yeah, I always talk to kids about like visualization and using that as a powerful tool. Like I would be at home either training on my bike, or it always happened a lot when I was driving in my car.
Yeah.
And I'd be driving in my car and I'd imagine I just finished a race run, and I'd always be like talking to the person in like the person at the bottom of the track, like, oh, you've just won this World Cup, how does it feel, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's probably kind of ironic that now I'm just like doing podcasts. So I think a part of the visualization was more, it's almost like, what can you do with that?
Yeah.
That people have eyes on you, and like what you could say. And it comes back to that kind of words have power. But the visualization of that feeling of you've just won, how does that feel?
Yeah.
And it's using that feeling as motivation to then put that into the gym, into the training, into the discipline, into getting up early. But if you can feel that, and like I'd be driving in my car, man, literally bawling my eyes out, crying, because I just fucking won a World Cup in my head.
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember, like what I said before, when I first got that podium at Lenzerheide, it didn't feel as good as it felt driving in my car to the gym when I was like 3 months earlier.
It's funny that, isn't it?
And so I thought about it, and I was like, it's because I'd already lived it.
Yeah.
It's because I'd emotionally lived that feeling several times in my life. So when I finally created it, it kind of like, oh, I've been here before. Yeah. I've done this before.
Yeah.
But it's like I needed to create that feeling, to use that as the fuel to get to that moment.
Yeah.
But by doing that, it dilutes it.
Yeah.
And it was just this kind of bit of a mind fuck for a while.
Like anticlimax kind of thing, or?
In a way, yeah. It's not like it didn't feel good. Like I was pumped, but like I didn't cry. I was like, this is sick. But dude, I was bawling my eyes out in my car thinking about that exact moment I was in. And then I got there and I was like, so this is what it's like, kind of thing. But
it's funny that, isn't it? Because they always say that with everything. Like when you're working your way up, they say, because all we're trying to do is get to where we want to be, right? The goals that we have and etc. And although when you're working your way up, it's kind of like, oh, I just want to get there now. I'm done, you know, all this hard work. But when you get there, sometimes it's kind of like you understand why people say, okay, the fun part was actually trying to get to that position. But now I'm at that position. It's kind of like, oh, okay. Like, you know, and it happens in a lot of different sports as well, doesn't it? Like if you look at like Tyson Fury, for example, with the boxing side of things, when he became undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, he fell into automatic big depression, and he was lost for 5-6 years from the sport, you know. And it's like, how can somebody sit in their dressing room after becoming world champ and then go into? But you can kind of see why he would, you know, because then it's like, oh, I thought it would be different to this.
Well, they convince themselves, I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
I'll be happy when I get to that title. I'll be happy when I find that girl. I'll be happy when I get that job. I'll be happy when I get $1 million.
Yeah.
And if you're not happy right now, you're not going to be happy then.
Yeah.
And then they realize, because they actually get it.
Yeah.
But like what you said there, and I thought about this the other day, because I've been like either running or riding my bike to the studio because I want to start training a bit more.
Yeah.
And it contradicts my whole career of being a downhill racer, but the quickest way somewhere isn't always the best. And by doing this, it was funny. Each time I do it, I'd always bump into people I knew, and I'd think about how much longer it took me. But I'm like, why is getting there quicker better? And how often do you get home and you sit on your phone for half an hour?
Yeah, exactly.
Or you get somewhere and you waste a heap of time. Where because I was riding there, I would bump into 4 or 5 people every time.
Yeah.
And I would stop and just like kind of, I don't know, soak in the sun or sit on the beach
Yeah.
or get a coffee, and it just made my whole day go so much better.
Yeah,
and
of
it was
course.
because I just didn't rush to get home to sit on my phone or
Yeah.
do nothing anyway. And it really got me thinking that it's like in life, everyone wants to get to the next stage the quickest they possibly can.
Yeah.
And then you look back and you go, I wish I enjoyed that a little bit more. Like, I wish I sat in that a little bit more
Yeah.
and actually opened my eyes and looked around. Because like everyone says it, man, and it's like so obvious, but time gets faster, not slower. And have you ever seen the movie Click with Adam Sandler? He like tries
I
to
think I have. And he's got the remote control,
remote
right?
control
Yeah.
thing. And the basis is that he just like tries to rush out of being sick, and he tries to rush into a promotion, and he tries to just rush through life. And then he realizes that he rushes way too far, and now he's old, these kids are old, they don't love him, like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious looking at that movie about how so many of us live lives like that. Like, I want to build a studio, and then you build a studio. I want to do that, and then you like do that. But you're rushing through all this stuff, and you don't actually like stop and smell the roses. We set goals and we try and achieve them, which is great. But like the process of achieving those goals, you should actually enjoy the moment of what it is, and understand like a massive goal of mine was to move to Queensland. Like that was my goal. I want to move to Queensland. That was the biggest focus I had, and that's where I thought all my happiness would be. And then I did it, and I was pumped. It was exciting. It was great. And then I was like, okay, now I want to open a studio, and you do that. And then there's like this whole idea of like setting things that I will be happy when, and you kind of do it throughout your entire life, and you go, I'm just going to be happy now, and I'm still going to do these things, but whether I achieve that or whether I don't shouldn't determine my happiness. Like, because you're giving these things so much control over you, whether it doesn't work out or not. And it comes back to some things could be out of your control. Like COVID happened, that stopped me from moving when I wanted to. It's like, just say I didn't get the lease for this studio, then that controls my, like, you know what I mean? It's like so many things are out of your control. And once you kind of like surrender to things that you can't control and just be happy with the fact that life's good, I'm healthy, I'm around good people, like the basics of life are all pretty good. Be stoked with that.
And be grateful as well, you know. I try and, especially these days, I try and practice being grateful for everything, you know, in terms of like the company, for example, you know, 12 months now, and I get really annoyed sometimes, and I'm pissed off that I haven't got to the place where I wanted to get to. And then I'm like, well, it's been going for 12 months. You know, you could be grateful for where you are. Do you know what I mean? Like, have that gratitude for, okay, well, I've actually done that, and that's a positive, you know, because we're very hard on ourselves as human beings, aren't we, in terms of trying to get to that end goal, and without stopping and being grateful for the situation, the basic things, you know, the health and things like that, you know, and think, well, I got a happy family, I got 2 puppies, do you know what I mean? Those basic things which make people content and happy. But yeah, practicing gratitude as well I think is a massive one along the way, which I try and do. I don't always do it as much as I should, but I try and do it as much as I can, because obviously it kind of levels you off on the way, and you're like, hey, just give yourself a break, you know what I mean? Just because MTB Giveaways isn't where you want it right now, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be within the next 2 years, you know, and be grateful for where it's at right now.
Because we always undersell our success.
Yeah. Oh, I'm terrible for it. 100%.
People are like, oh, you're doing so great. And you're like, oh, I could be doing better.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I should do more.
Yeah.
But I always think about that, even when I've got friends, like, you've done so much with the studio. I'm like, oh, I haven't done that much.
Yeah.
And they're like,
and it's easy to kind of like just talk negatively of yourself almost, you know, like, because it's because you don't see it, because you're in the mix of doing what you do, and you're working your ass off trying to get to that place when people come in and are like, bloody hell, like.
Well, as an athlete, you never want to be complacent.
Yeah.
It's always like, what else can I do?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that consumes you, is you never want to be like, well, I'm doing enough.
Yeah.
Because there's always like, okay, I could do more recovery, I could do more gym, I could do more. Like, there's always more you can do with your body, your health, your career. So I think transferring that over to anything else, there's always like, I never feel content. There's always like, there's more. And then when people come and said, man, you've done such a great job, I'm like, oh yeah, but I could do this. Like, there's always nitpicking to everything. And it's like, how do you kind of, I'm getting better at turning that off and just being like, thank you. Like, I have been working really hard. And kind of, again, stop and smell the roses, and you're like, I built this whole studio and I didn't know what I was doing.
Exactly, yeah. That's 90% more than a lot of other people would have done, you know? And you know what business is like as well? Like, even getting through the first 12 months in business, you know, that is like a massive thing. Like, 90% of businesses fail. in their first year, you know. So like, it's like for us, you know, our other business as well. It's kind of like, well, it's great that we're 3.5 years down the track right now, and it's a thriving business, you know. And although I'm like, oh, we need more clients here, we need this, we need that, you know, we need more salespeople, and all those things, you know. It's kind of like, well, to be fair, a lot of businesses go under in the first 12 months. So we do 3.5 years down the line and have some of the clients we do. I'm actually quite grateful about that, you know. So
Yeah, you look at the positives.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny the lack of belief we sometimes have in ourselves with what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then other people see it. And I think coming back, talking about these like young kids you want to help, I know in the athlete sense, the biggest thing that I saw for helping up and coming kids, and probably this spreads out to everyone in general, is like, if you have belief in them and they feel that belief and understand it, like that is the best thing that you can do for an up and coming athlete, is like believe in them. And especially when it comes to someone that is done or is doing what they would like to do, if you can show that they feel it and believe and start to believe it, you will see their results and them as a person grow so much. And that, like, that's the easiest thing you can do. Literally tell a kid, like, you can win this race. And like, really? I'm like, yeah. And then they go, fuck, maybe I can. That, like, that's, what's that? Switch flicks.
Yeah.
And they actually believe that they can win that race.
Yeah.
They have just got 50% better just because of that.
Yeah.
Like, it just takes that
confidence.
Because, man, it's such a different feeling going to a World Cup and going in practice and going, oh, I want to do well, maybe I get a top 10. And then going to a race and being like, I'm going to win this race.
Yeah.
And there's been few times at a World Cup where I felt that I could win a race.
Yeah.
But every time it's like, how do you create that feeling everywhere? Because it doesn't go everywhere. Like if I go to a Vic race, I'm like, I'm going to win this race. And I feed off that energy, and I like, you must resonate that, and people must see it and feel it as well. But yeah, it's how you, but that can get transferred to anything. It's like, I'm going to build this business. Like 100% I'm going to build this business. Oh, I'm going to like go and talk to that girl. And like you use that confidence and that belief that it's going to work, and people see that and like they feel that and feed off that, and you use that as much as you can.
That's right.
But you transfer that anything. But it's, again, it just comes back to that like belief factor.
That's all it is.
And how you create that.
And it comes from an early stage in your life as well, doesn't it? You look at some parents for where they are with their kids. You know, it's a lot. It happens a lot in mountain biking and the dirt biking side of the dirt biking. It happens a hell of a lot. You get parents who are extremely pushy on their kids, you know, and it's if they're not getting the result, it's more of a negative thing. It's more of a let's pack up the stuff and go home now, because do you know what I mean? And it's like, I've been surrounded by that before, and it's, I don't know. It's, you've had some pretty decent people come out of upbringings like that for sure. I know Danny Hart's dad's a bit like that, put a lot of pressure on him. When I used to race against him in the early days back, when he was like 12, 13, it was like, you know, the pits were like a pretty hairy place if he didn't do well in a race, you know. And I think that works for some people, but at the same time it doesn't work. It's never been my style, to be honest with you, that kind of like high pressure, you know, we'll just pack up the van and go home now if you're not doing well. Do you know what I mean? Because it kind of takes the fun out of it. Yeah. You're probably more likely to burn out quicker.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And then you get to the level and then you're like, why am I even doing this? Do you know what I mean? Am I doing this just because it was our weekend thing that we did and Dad wanted me to win a race so much, you know? And now I'm making my own mind up as an adult. It's kind of like, you know, I think that's why a lot of riders step away from it, because
at 18,
they make it their life so much. They buy the motorhome, they've got everything, and every weekend they're there at the races, you know. Mum and Dad are there with them, and it's this big high pressure event for the family, you know. And if they don't do well, you and your dad don't speak for a week. Do you know what I mean? I've seen that so many times. Not my personal preference, to be honest with you. But
I always tell parents, man, it's a fine line between pushing your kids into a sport and pushing them out of it.
Yeah.
And so often I'll see, kids feel that pressure. And like you said, they get to 18, they find girls, they find their license, they find going out partying. It's like, why would I go to a race and get yelled at by my
dad?
Like, me not racing makes the relationship between me and my dad better.
Yeah.
So why would I risk a relationship with my father
to
do something that, I did enjoy it, but now I don't want to fight with my dad?
Yeah, exactly.
And I've seen it as well heaps of times. So like, to any parents out there, like, support your kids, but don't have to push them.
Yeah.
Like, and I will say it was funny because I would see some parents, because my parents are super supportive, but they didn't care if I raced mountain bikes. they supported me racing mountain bikes.
Yeah.
But Dad was never like, you need to do this. He always said, he's like, I don't care what you do, just do something.
Yeah.
Whether it's playing piano, I don't know.
Have a hobby.
Have a hobby.
Yeah.
Do something and put effort into something, but I don't care what you do. And I know if I just said one day that I don't want to race mountain bikes anymore, I'd be like, okay, cool. And just because of that, it made me want to do it. But I was always that kid. If you told me to do something, I would run the other direction.
Yeah.
It's like, don't touch this, touch that.
Yeah.
Don't do this. It's like, if you start telling me like, oh, you've got to do this. And there was probably a part of me that saw other parents that were very supportive of their kids and were like more in it.
Yeah.
And were like helping them change like roll-offs and putting tear-offs on their goggles and like being really in the sport.
Yeah.
And Dad wasn't, I guess, that in it.
Yeah.
Like if I probably asked him to do it, he would have done it. But
Yeah.
you know, kind of you want your dad to just kind of like be into it.
Yeah,
but then I look
yeah.
back at it and I kind of liked that he made me find my own feet a little bit more.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And then when I went overseas and competed in my early days of my career when I was living out of a van with the Vanzacks, it made it easier because I didn't have Dad there wipe my ass.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, I'm glad you kind of made me find my own feet and obviously stayed in love with it because of the fact that you weren't trying to push me in or out of it. You didn't care.
Yeah.
It's like when someone forces you to do something, no matter what it is and how much you love to do it, if they keep forcing you, I think human nature, you want to push back.
Yeah.
And you want to okay, well, you're pushing me in here. Do I really want to be in here?
Yeah.
And then you kind of figure out, well, is this for me or isn't for me?
Yeah.
So
naturally, I may have even gone down that road anyway. You know what I mean? Naturally.
Yeah.
But if I'm pushed down that road, it's funny.
And I like when I was working with Ollie Davis a lot when he was younger, and I helped him get a, I don't know if it was one, I think, I helped him get an intense bike.
Yeah.
And I'd always tell him, man, I was like, you don't owe me anything.
Yeah.
If you want to sell this thing, if you don't want to ride anymore, I don't care. And it's like giving someone that space to feel like, well, what do I want to do?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you tell someone what to do, it's like, well, do I want to do it? And it makes them really question themselves. So I would always do that with athletes. It's like, and you've got to learn the fact that I will give as much as I will give with nothing in return. I just want to help you because like you with your giveaways, it's like, it feels good.
Yeah.
Just to help you feels good. Yeah. And I don't care what comes back. But so often people give to this certain amount where they want something in return. And then you put this expectation on helping someone where it's like, you're not helping them because of what it feels. You're helping them because you want return. It's it's an investment in in a friendship. And if you don't get it back, you get petty, you get annoyed, you get resentment, and then it fucks the whole relationship. So it's like, if you actually want to help someone, just help them.
Yeah.
Don't help them for like, oh, well, you owe me this now. It's like, no, and that's what was like working with Ollie and this Zach Bradley kid. It's like, I get enjoyment out of helping you and seeing you progress in the sport. And probably in some way there's some, I guess, legacy piece on like, I played a role in helping you get there, which feels good. It's like planting a seed and watching a tree grow.
100%.
You go, I get to enjoy this later when I'm not racing. Like when I watch Ollie race, I'm like, that gets me excited to watch the World Cup racing because I played a part in your career to get you there. So in some way, I feel like I'm racing through you.
Yeah.
So that feels good as well. So I think it's like planting those seeds and doing that. But I think that's why you should help people like that, not for the return. And
not for, just for, because you want to help them. You actually did a video when he got his syndicate ride. I remember, and it was, you're obviously super proud in that video because that's a big ride to get. You know, you said in that video, watched it earlier on today actually, because I was thinking, I wonder how the podcast normally goes. I was watching a few videos before. And you've been part of his career, and for him to get on such a, high-end team like that, like, I don't know how you look at it as a rider, but for me, that's like one of the top ones, right? That's like, and you almost got yourself on that, where there was discussions, right, of you potentially going on that team at one point, right?
That was a funny, after 2019, I was talking with Rob and Greg and stuff, and kind of in discussions about maybe going there. I was still in contract with Scott, but after 2020, maybe going there. So there was talks.
Yeah.
And then obviously COVID happened, everything got changed up.
Yeah.
But it's just like the whole butterfly effect. You didn't know how something would have gone, but then to see him get that ride, it was almost like I'm living through you in a way. And I was like,
100%.
well, it didn't happen for me, but it gets to happen for you. And like that made me so proud that again, I remember going to his house, man, when he was still going to school, and him saying he wanted to be a professional downhill mountain bike racer, and his mum's like, well, you're going to have to go fast. He's like, yeah, I don't want to go to school. And like moments like that, and then to see someone progress to where they are now, it's like, man, like that's kind of what life's all about, is to help someone. Like I got helped out so much with so many different people in my career. So it's like, pay it forward. Like like why did people come and do that for me? And I hope it was because I was a good person and put that out to the world, and they said, I want to help that kid. He seems all right. So like pay that forward and then help the next person and like keep that flow and effect of just helping people because it feels good. And now I hope he can play that role and then help some other kid progress and chase their dream and make their life what they want it to be. So it's all simple. It's like so simple really when you break it all down. But I never understand why people don't put more effort into other people. Like it seems like a cheat code to life where you can do something and it doesn't even have to be that big, but then that flow and effect can alter someone's life forever. And you can just kind of sit back and go, I gave that person a little push in the right direction. And now they've used that momentum with their own motivation, their own discipline, their own lifestyle choices, and have made their life into something that's incredible. And you can kind of just sit back and go, I'm glad I helped with that push.
I don't want anything from it, you know, or for it. I'm happy that I was part of that, you know. 100%.
And I guess coming back to like giving away bikes to people, like that can have such a massive impact on someone's life, whether they race it and go to that next level, or even selling it to have the money to maybe fund a trip overseas to race and compete, like whatever it may be. It's like you are giving them a push in a different direction that they might not have had the opportunity to have.
Oh, it's incredible, mate. Honestly, some of the people we've met as well are just like different walks of life, you know. Some people who have won a bike are like key mountain bikers, which is great because it's good publicity for the company as well. Some of them are literally just getting into it, you know. There was a guy we gave a bike away to, Chris Johnston, his name is, a South African guy, and he had actually just been given the all clear. He had like, I forget what kind of cancer it was now, but he was stage 3, and we went to meet him, and we met him for a while, spent a couple of hours with him, and he told me about his life situation, about how he's wanted to get into riding for quite some time, doesn't have a bike at the moment, and he's been through all of this shit for so long, but now he's good because he's had the clear of it. And he literally got the clear, I think it was, he'll watch this, but a few weeks before, and then we rock up at his house with a brand new bike and stuff. We just spent hours with him just chatting, you know, and just it's incredible. It really is, you know. It's I didn't know it would be so rewarding, but it's a good feeling for sure.
It's good. I was going to ask you, because we said before, like everything is a business.
Yeah.
How does this work with, because you said you're pumping pretty much most of the money, if not all the money, back into growing it. What's the kind of business model about putting money back in, starting up a team, and then obviously maybe separating it from giveaways? And like, how do you want to structure and push it forward?
That's a tough one, because I know eventually I may have to rebrand into a different name. The reason being is because it's giveaways, right? And I feel like that for what the company is now, the giveaways are just such a small part of what the big plan is. So maybe have to rebrand eventually, I'm not sure, but it will become more of somewhat of a union, you know, somewhat of a, you know, there's this platform where we're maybe putting on a race series. I'd love to put on a race series, like you said earlier, putting on a race series where the prize money's good. You know, good prize money, give people bonuses for getting on podiums, you know, just really like put some excitement back into the sport, you know. But that's a good question in terms of, you know, I want to, obviously I've got a team at the moment, which I'm in the process of building. Like I said, there's 4 riders, but like I said, I'm in talks with another company in terms of backing their team as well, but I'm always very careful because I'm at the stage where I believe in any business, you know, you just got to, every penny you make, there's no point putting it in the bank and just watching it. You got to throw it back out there for marketing, right? You have to. So that's been my mindset with everything I've always done, and especially with this, you know. So even though sometimes I'm like, oh wow, I'm spending a lot there in terms of sponsoring that rider or putting that cash prize up or whatever it may be, I know in the long run it's going to massively pay off, because it's creating what I want to create, which is a movement, I suppose, in bringing some excitement into a sport where, like I said earlier, if a top rider in the world is getting paid not even $4,000 for winning a World Cup, then, you know, and that's why, you know, the first round, the excitement that I've received just for putting $1,000 up as a cash prize, You know, just $1,000. That's not life-changing money, but just for that, you know, the excitement, the people messages saying I wasn't going to race that, but now I might. It seems to be stacking up almost like a bloody World Cup race. You know what I mean? A lot of elite riders, a lot of people who weren't going to race, and the more I can do that, obviously I'm doing that at the first round, and then I had a few, and I wanted to do something for the females as well because that's just as important. Because I put the fastest time of the day, and myself and you know both, it will most likely be a male that gets the fastest time of day, you know. So I wanted to do it for the females as well. So I've done it in orange, I think, which is the 4th round. For the female, same thing. You know, but yeah, I suppose the end goal, if I'm not differing from your question too much, is create a race team, which is a well-paid race team, with the backing and support that you know, as riders they deserve. Create a race series a few years down the line. I think that'll be because a lot of money in creating a race series, you know, and sponsor as many riders as I possibly can from each state. You know, I'd like to eventually end up sponsoring like 30, 35 riders, you know, and giving them the support that they want. And I suppose just, like I said, bringing some more excitement back into a sport, which I feel like in many ways has been neglected in the most important ways. The athletes don't control the sport. The organisation controls the athletes, you know, and a lot of other sports, that's not the case. You look at UFC, for example, the athletes put on the table what they want. And then Dana, like you said, Dana sat there afterwards going, right, this person got 50 grand for bonus fight of the night, do you know what I mean? And they're all being super transparent about what everyone's getting paid. There's no transparency in what everyone's getting paid. Like I tried looking at the other day what the winner would get paid for hardline, and I couldn't find it anywhere. Like that should be online. You should be able to see like, oh, the winner's going to get paid 10, 15 grand. I don't know what it is because I couldn't find it. But yeah.
I always wonder that with like rider salary as well through companies, whether they just put it all on the table.
Yeah. Just to let everyone know, you know, and that might get the brands battling then to get the better riders by putting bids in for the riders, you know. But yeah, we've got a long way to go before we've got like a race series going. But in the short term, it's sponsoring, like we did just small things. Like there was a Central Coast club. They did a Ulimbar. Is that how you say it? Ulimbar.
Ulimbar, yeah.
Yeah. They did a race. Not last week, the week before, and we just threw in a GoPro 13 just for everyone who bought a ticket for the race and just things like that, you know. But the more we grow, and like I said, I never saw this company as a profit-making company for myself. That wasn't my motivation for starting it up. It was never like, oh, I'm going to be another giveaway company and I'm going to make loads of money. It was never like that, you know. I thought if I can just get away with doing it alongside what I'm already doing, and give back as much as I can, then that will be amazing, right? And it's just gone and gone and gone. But yeah, I mean, the team is an exciting aspect to it, I think. And I want to turn up at these races and other brands and companies see, okay, this is how you should be backing a team.
Yeah.
You know, this is how we should really be doing it. So the riders I sponsor, they get a bonus if they get a podium regardless. You know, I'll always give them a bonus because it's great branding for me. You know, and I feel like riders need to get a lot more knowledgeable of what's good branding for a business. You know, like if somebody's going to stand on a podium first place and they're going to wear an MTB t-shirt, then then that's amazing branding for me. You know, so obviously I'm going to need to pay for that because for me that's marketing, the best kind of marketing I could get, you know. But yeah, in terms of a business model as well, I mean, without sponsored ads, and I think the Facebook and the Instagram marketing side of things as well, I don't think you'd be able to run a giveaway company in general. You know, it's it's kind of like the way you structure it is, okay, I'm just going to go flat out with sponsored ads for the first few months. I'll generate some interest doing that. People will see the company. Hopefully they trust it. They'll buy tickets. They'll buy a membership. And then that's kind of like an effect that keeps going, you know, and then all of a sudden you've got a database full of people that have been involved before. So it's easier for me now than it was then, because now if I launch a bike and say, I'm doing this V10 giveaway, for example, well, I've already got a database of people who have trusted the company before. So it's very easy, well, not very easy, but it's easier for me to promote it to them guys first before I do the sponsored ads, you know. But I don't even know if I will do the giveaways eventually. Maybe, I think maybe do like, at the moment I've been doing once a week. It's been crazy, but maybe one big one a month or something like that, and just have it go in there because that's how the company started, and I want to keep, you know, loyal to the roots of what got it to this point. But yeah, end goal would be for sure a race team, race series, and just just backing it as much as I possibly can.
And you think the biggest funding will come through sponsors or through the giveaways of people buying tickets and sponsors, kind of depending on?
That's funny. The giveaways, it's hard to break even on the giveaways, to be honest with you, because it's like I'm buying like 15 grand bikes, like that bike I got from Jared. I got it for a good price, but it's still a 15 grand bike. I'm not really getting bikes for any cheaper than 10 grand. So it's kind of like, okay, you buy a 10 grand bike, you've got to spend thousands on sponsored ads. But my meta campaign is always just running all the time. So you got to break even with the bikes, which now just about I'm able to do. I haven't on a lot of them, but I'm just about being able to do that now because I've got the members as well, which is good. So every time I have managed to break even and make a little bit more, it's kind of like, right, there we go, stick it back out. So the sponsors, like no one's actually sponsoring the company yet. So I don't get any money from anyone else. So
but when you do the race team and the series, you'd get like outside sponsors to try and come in and support.
100%. Yeah. With the team at the moment, I've got no sponsors, but 100%, I would go out there to other brands and say, hey, do you want to be involved, kind of thing. Which I think that would be a massive help rather than just trying to do it all myself.
Yeah, and you try and do that Australia wide.
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to do it in the UK as well. That would be pretty cool.
Do it both.
Yeah, 100%. That'd be hard to do it from the UK because, again, it's a trust thing. I filming all my content in Australia and, I know I've got a British accent, but it would be difficult to do that. It just takes so much trust. Like, even now, it's like I've got used to it, but it's like the word scam is just a common word that I've just got used to now. You know what I mean? When you're trying to do something like this. And I suppose, again, it's the giveaway thing, it's... There's lots of giveaway raffle companies, whatever you want to call them out there. And unfortunately, with the giveaway name, it's put me in a bucket of those other companies, which is sometimes hard to get out of, But there's a few companies, good companies out there. There's a company called MWMX with Kale. He's a ex-professional motocross rider. He's killing it in the motocross world. He's doing a few dirt bikes and stuff like that. So, where was I? Yeah. I forgot where I was going with that now.
Just sponsors and getting people behind it.
Yeah. If I could do that, that's amazing. And if I can do that and that pumps more money into the company, then guess what? I've got more money to pump out of a company, and maybe in a few years' time, maybe it might be a profitable company where it's actually money making for myself, but that will just be a plus for me. Yeah. If it gets to that, it'll just be like, oh, great, happy days. Now I'm taking a salary from it or whatever, but for me, it's good because we've got that other company. And that's where our focus has been for so many years now. So it's great because I'm not like plowing away trying to make my living with this company. It's kind of just like I say, that side hustle that's evolved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say the biggest thing that you see like organisers are doing wrong, either in the World Cups or Australian series when it comes to racing that they could change?
I think the prize money for sure. Like obviously we've been over that one, but I think getting the riders to have more of an input is a massive one. I think like we've been over that, with the UCI, it's they're the ones at the end of the day that are bringing the viewers. You know what I mean? They're the ones that, if no riders turned up to Toowoomba, for example, then you wouldn't have an event. It's the riders that are running the event, so allow the riders to have a feedback. For a while there in the World Cup, I didn't know where World Cup racing was going to go because it looked like bike parks were just going to be the norm moving forward. At one point, I thought, Leo Gang, right, is the bike park you want? Yeah. At one point, I thought, they're just making these bike parks now and the times are going to be super close and they're just going to make them all bike parks. But then it kind of changed a little bit and I saw a few more rugged tracks on the World Cup scene, but I'm digressing off that. What was I talking about?
It's hard with that as well, like you say, the bike park part of it, because I know from talking with people, like they like to have the times as tight as possible. They like to have it as close, and for me as well, like I don't mind riding fast tracks, but it's getting to a point now where there's like who can throw themselves down the hill.
Yeah.
Like there's no technical stuff, there's no tight stuff, it's just flat out.
Yeah.
And it becomes obviously more dangerous the more you do that.
Yeah.
But then it's like, they don't care about feedback.
No.
From us.
No.
It just goes.
Well, and that's for the domestic races as well, So, yeah, so that's what I was going to say. In terms of, or cycling, for example, I think there could be a lot more promotion on the event for sure. You know, for me personally, if I was running that event in Toowoomba right now, I would already have posters up on the lampposts or whatever and everywhere where you could see it. But there's a big event happening in January, you know, and get people excited. Oh, what's that mountain biking event? Oh, that looks pretty cool. Let's go and watch that, you know. Because if you don't follow social media or you don't know the schedule or you're not a fan, then it's not going to bring in more people because you're not going to know it's on, right? So I think just trying to get more people to the races, I think, and let the riders have a little bit more of a say in what's going on. And I think they should be given bonuses for sure for podiums. I mean, I just think it's I think it's obscene that, you know, you race a whole downhill series in Australia. Like it's the official downhill series, right? And you race a whole thing and you get $1,500 like prize money, or you get race entries.
That still seems a lot to me.
It's just, I might have read it wrong, but it's just obscene, you know. It's like give them something to race for. You know, there's plenty. I believe there's plenty of money knocking around. You know, and they reckon that's just because of the race entries they're able to afford that. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a little bit more money than $1,500 knocking around.
Well, I just look at it. I'm a big fan of the Victorian Downhill Series, and they paid more than the National Series, and their entries were cheaper.
Yeah,
and the event was run pretty much the same. So
yeah.
I look at that, it's like, yeah, it can be done because other people are doing it. So yeah, fuck it. Yeah, man, it's tricky because then I was someone that I was like, maybe I'll get involved in it more and try and help, and then you kind of go into it a little bit and you go, oh, man, I kind of, like you say, want to do my own thing because I feel like trying to be involved in that, you're just stepping on toes and people don't want you there. And
that's what I've got at the moment, man. Like literally, it's and it's all. I always knew that was going to be the case. I always knew if I wanted to build, create something, then I always knew that was going to be the case of stepping on a few people's toes, you know. And I'm going through that right now, and you know, it's most of the time, like I said, 80% of it is love for it. You know, why wouldn't it be putting on prize money for the fastest rider? Why wouldn't there not be love for that? You know, but like I said earlier, when there's an organisation who've been around, who have controlled it for so long, they'll just stick to doing what they're doing. Nobody's complained so far, right? So why would we change anything? So when somebody steps up and says, no, I disagree with that, and you know what, I'm going to fund that, and I'm going to put $1,000 down out of my company to the fastest rider just because I want them to be acknowledged for it. You know, not for my, you know, obviously it's going to look good for the company as well. I can't shy away from that, but at the same time, it's going to bring more people to the races, hopefully. You know what I mean? Get more elite racers racing on a domestic level as well, which really the likes of Oz Cycling, for example, if they've got more entries from doing that, should be happy days for them, right? But it doesn't always work.
That's what I mean. They don't work together.
They don't.
It's all these separate entities that are all trying for the same thing, but just doing it in different ways.
Like Toowoomba Bike Club, like amazing response. You know, been messaging back and forth. They love every aspect of it because all of a sudden they're getting more people entering the race. But yeah, the higher up you go, the more shit you get, pretty much. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. The higher up you go, the more corporate it gets. And the more corporate it gets in something like this, in the mountain biking world, all of a sudden you get brands saying, no, we're going to stop you from doing that. You know what I mean? And then you think, well, where's your interest then? Yeah. If you want me to stop doing that when all I'm doing is good and there's actually no negative in what I'm doing whatsoever, what are your thoughts on it then?
Because the fact that it's like, how can you stop me from giving money to someone?
Yeah. Like, do you not care about me giving a rider money? Do you know what I mean? So I start thinking then, okay, it's just business for you then. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because otherwise you would be like thumbs up promoting it. Yeah, we're happy that you're doing this, you know? So, it's a funny one.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you 3 more questions. I always finish with these before we knock off. I don't know if you watch videos before, you might know them.
Yeah.
If you go back, change something, or give yourself some advice to do something differently in your life, what would it be?
It would be patient. Be patient. It's coming, you know, and don't get so het up that in your early years you're not where you want to be or don't know where you want to be. And just, especially in my 20s, I would have said to the person in my 20s, I would have said, just chill out. You know, I feel like, I don't know if it was the same for you. I feel like anxiety levels when you're going through your 20s, especially in the late 20s, is an all-time high because you're trying to figure out who you are. You're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. You're trying to figure out, well, you had it down pat because you were racing at the time, but
you're still questioning.
Yeah, like where you want to go, doing where you want to go in a life, and etc. But yeah, I mean, just chill out and it will come, you know, and don't put yourself under too much pressure. You know, it's funny. You know, Gary V, he says all the time, like, he talks to people in their 50s and they're like, I'm done. Like, I'd never figured out what I wanted to do with my life, and now I feel like I'm done. I'm too late to start any courses or anything like that, and I just feel like, yeah, life's gone. And he has this whole thing where he's like, 50 is still so young. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? So be patient. People are living for so much longer these days, you know? Like, there's people who aren't getting successful or knowing what they want to do until they're in their 40s, 50s, you know? So, yeah, I think that's what I would say. Take the pressure off and just enjoy it a little bit more. And if you do what you love to do and have fun, then your life will just work out some way or another anyway.
Yeah, it'll come together.
Yeah.
What are you scared of?
What am I scared of? That's have you got an answer for that? What am I scared of?
I think you just looked over to your wife to be like...
yeah, my wife. What am I scared of? What am I scared of? That's... there's multiple things, but I want to say spiders. I suppose I'm... that's a tough one. Yeah. Scared, I suppose, of what I just went over a minute ago, running out of time, you know, scared of, you know, there's so many factors in life that come in when you're trying to get, yeah, like I said, I'm 35 now, you know, and you look, okay, do we want kids? Do we not want kids? You know what I mean? In 5 years, I'm going to be 40. You know, and time seems to be going so bloody quick in my 30s, you know, like, what the hell's going on? I'm on the wrong side of 35 now, and I'm going to be 40 in like 4.5 years. And I'm like, wow, like 40 is a young age, right? So I'm scared of that, scared of like, okay, what does getting your shit together mean? And a lot of people would say I've already got my shit together, but in a way, I think the old school way of you've got your shit together because you've got some kids. Do you know what I mean? And everything's ticked off like that, you know? So, yeah, probably scared of, like, me trying to reach my goal so much kind of, like, outweighs the other things, like having a family and having kids. Because, like I say, I'm at that age now where it's kind of like, when you get in your 30s, you're like, okay, you gotta have kids now, you know? You have to.
Yeah. That's so funny that you just said that. What advice would you give yourself?
Yeah.
And you kind of said, don't stress and just kind of... It'll happen when it'll happen, and then I ask you what you're scared of, and you kind of stress about things not happening.
I know. So I'm like contradicting myself massively.
Well, maybe you still need to hear that advice now.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And the last one, when you're dead and gone, how do you want to be remembered?
As somebody that would help people, that was a nice guy and was genuine. You know, I'm not too fussed about being remembered for being successful, but success you can determine in many different ways. You know, successful isn't always money, right? Successful is like, you know, how much you did for people, how much you help people out, and just be remembered. Like, you know, he would always be up for having a chat if I had a problem. You know what I mean? I could go to him if I had a problem and I would listen. So yeah, I mean, just being approachable and being that person where it was like, you know, yeah, he was a good guy. Good guy, he was friendly, and he always had time for people, which I always tried to have time for people, you know, as hectic as life is. But yeah, I suppose that's how I'd want to be remembered.
No, I love that. That's great.
Cheers.
All right, how can people find you, and what have you got coming up?
What have I got coming up? So I've got the giveaway side of things. I'm announcing a winner tomorrow night for a Pivot Max 6. That's a beautiful bike. And then the following week, I've got a Santa Cruz Bronson, which I'm doing, and then I've got a AM or AM Flow. I'm not sure how you say it. AM Flow, I call it. One of those e-bikes coming in, which is sick. I want one of them for sure. Have you read the reviews and stuff about them? It's got a DJI drone. So they don't use Shimano or Bosch batteries. They're using a DJI battery in it. It's insane. You should read up about it. It's mental. So I'm doing one of them. Sponsoring more riders. In talks with Australian-based downhill team at the moment in becoming their main sponsor, and just trying to improve the industry as much as I can. More cash giveaways to the mountain bike, races hopefully on a global level, but for now just Australian, just while the company's building. And you can find me on the website. Well, you can find me in social medias where I do most of my stuff on the Instagram, which is Instagram.com/. mtb.giveaways.australia, I think it is, yeah.
Okay, we'll throw it all in the description.
Yeah. And the website, which is mtbgiveawaysaustralia.com.au. Trying to post as much updates as we can at the moment. A lot of people will notice my content's changing just from, again, a natural kind of transition, just from the giveaway side of things to, okay, this guy's actually here to try and develop the sport. And that's why I said I've had such a big turnaround recently, because people are like, not just trying to make some money. He's not trying to make a quick buck out of flogging some bikes. He's actually trying to make a difference, you know. So, yeah, you can find me there. I have got a YouTube channel, but there's no point mentioning that yet because it's like super early days on that. So, I've got like 10 subscribers or something. So, yeah.
The grind.
Yeah, that's it, man.
Awesome.
Okay, sweet.
Thanks for coming for the chat.
Cheers, mate.
Really
appreciate having me in.
Finally got some mountain bike content out to the fans. It's been a minute. But yeah, I hope some people take a lot from that. But
yeah, awesome.
I appreciate it.
Cheers, mate. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Dan.
Cheers.